Hey guys, just a reminder that the annual elk hunting seminar hosted by Christian Hunters of America is coming up this July 16th. Doors open at 5 p.m. The seminar is at 6 at the Calvary Church just off of I-17 between Thunderbird and Cactus. BowhuntingAZ will be there recording podcasts, and we'll have our booth there as well with merch. Come say hi, and let's all elevate our knowledge about elk. Can't wait to see you all there. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the BowhuntingAZ podcast. In this episode, I am pumped to be interviewing the one and only Steve Chappell. Some of you may know Steve from his TV series, Elk Camp TV. Some of you may have heard him on podcasts throughout the outdoor industry, and if you're not following his social media, you're making a huge mistake. From educational miniseries called Daily Bugle, to general tips and tricks, this man is a wealth of knowledge, and we are fortunate enough to be able to pick his brain just short of 2 hours. I threw everything I had into this episode in hopes of getting the most out of it, and I hope you all enjoy this. Let's jump on into the episode. Backwoods grind. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a huge coffee nut. I like my coffee strong and a solid flavor to back it up. The guys over at Backwoods Grind have it going on. I get my coffee shipped every 2 weeks to me automatically, and you can choose whole bean or different variations of ground. You can opt for a one-time purchase, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. Backwoods Grind is a coffee that goes beyond the mug. From traditions to memories and long-lasting relationships, these are all built upon the passion brought to you by their blends, specifically roasted for hunters and outdoorsmen alike. Be sure to check out their 3 newly released blends, Camp House, Fireside, and Nightcap. Visit backwoodsgrind.com and use code BAZ10 to get 10% off your order. I'd also like to thank Rax. Rax is hands down the coolest bow hangers on the market. Display your bow with pride in your house, your garage, or anywhere you'd like. They carry most major bow brands while also offering a custom service if you have an idea or logo of your own that you'd like to make into a bow hanger. Use them to display your traditional bow, compound bow, or crossbow. They also work great for hanging your hunting gear, bags, or hats. Not to mention, the designs look just plain awesome all by themselves. A Rax hanger makes for a great gift for that special hunter in your life. Go to raxinc.com, that's RAXXINC.com, to see some of the available designs or contact Rax to discuss a custom hanger of your own. If you'd like to see how sick their custom hangers are, go check out my Instagram feed. For listeners of the BowhuntingAZ podcast, use the promo code PODCAST and get 15% off your order. Rax, show off your passion. Open Country Optics. Open Country Optics is your #1 online source for optics and optics rentals. With quality Swarovski glass before your eyes, Open Country Optics brings the game closer. Rentals include a tripod, binos, and you can even add on a phone scope or foldable chair to glass from. All of the optics arrive in a durable Pelican case with insulated foam. You won't find any other company who provides you an all-inclusive package like Open Country Optics. Visit them today at opencountryoptics.com. Use promo code BHAZ and get 5% off rentals or $50 off any optics purchase. Open Country Optics, bringing the game closer. Scent Assassin. Scent Assassin, the new leader in scent elimination. Scent Assassin manufactures the latest technology in scent elimination spray, body wash, and laundry detergent. Forget the wind, hunt anywhere, anytime. Check out their full product line at scentassassin.com. Use promo code BowhuntingAZ for 20% off your order. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the BowhuntingAZ podcast. I'm really pumped for today's episode. I'm very honored for our guest that's here. I'm very grateful too for the time that he's given me. He's a very, very busy guy. But we're proud to welcome Steve Chappell on the episode today, and we're going to really pick his brain. So let's kind of jump on into things. And Steve, tell us, where exactly did your hunting all start, and kind of who taught and mentored you through that journey?
Hey, Stephen, thanks. I really appreciate you having me on today. It's a real honor, and I'm looking forward to this. My hunting roots go way back to being raised by a mom and a dad who, got me into it right off the bat. I can remember going on deer hunts with my dad when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and getting BB guns and pellet guns and basically all the things that boys dream about for their birthdays when they're younger. And so I can even remember at a young age, probably 7 or 8, setting my alarm every morning for the crack of dawn and basically going out and hunting with a BB gun all day, coming back for lunch and then coming back for dinner, and having all these gory stories to tell my mom, bless her heart, got done for the day. So it was just kind of a natural thing for me to be a hunter. I just wouldn't know any different, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I grew up doing a lot of small game and stuff like that, but as I've gotten older and really dove into the big game, it's certainly become a big way of life, and I can see how a lot of people just live it, day in and day out. How long overall, how many total years have you think you've been hunting for?
Oh gosh, I'm going to really date myself here. I think dinosaurs still roamed the earth when I started. Oh gosh, I would say easily you could say over 40 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
To date, what has been your most memorable personal hunt, and why?
Oh, Stephen, I would definitely say that's a great question. I would have to say it first kill. That was back in the early 90s. I had rifle hunted, up to that point, and I just kind of started getting my feet wet in calling at that time.
Uh-huh.
And I can still remember it was the very first time that I went up to the mountains to archery elk hunt. It was in southern Colorado, where we've got over-the-counter tags up there. And I crossed the Dolores River in the pitch black dark. The water was almost up to my waist. I was probably half crazy to do this, but started hiking up the hillside, got about half a mile up there, started blowing some cow calls on a mouth reed, and I'll be darned if a bull didn't answer from, maybe 300 or 400 yards up on the hill above me. And I moved toward him, cut the distance down by about half, and within a couple of minutes there he was within bow range, and I shot him, and he went down within view. And I remember thinking to myself, I should have started this years ago. This is easy. And, I found out since then that it's not always as easy as it was that time, but that was just incredibly memorable for me to have that happen that quickly on the very time that I can. Just something I'll never forget, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. As a Christian, how has your personal faith impacted your hunting?
I think, to be honest with you, I think it validates my whole reason for hunting. I don't want to sound rude or anything like that. I know everybody has their own beliefs and whatnot, but I just feel like that if I didn't approach it from a biblical standpoint, I would feel like I didn't really have the right to ethically take the life of an elk or any other animal. But God lays it out right there in Genesis that we have dominion over the animals, and it's our responsibility to manage them in an ethical, responsible manner. And I do think this might sound strange to some, but I feel like hunters love these animals more than someone who doesn't hunt can even imagine. I feel like we have the utmost respect for them. I know there's been times in the off season, when you've probably had this as well, or as some of the listeners. If we encounter an elk or something that's stuck in a fence or whatnot, we'll do whatever we can to help that animal out, so that it doesn't have to suffer. And we're all about hunting these animals in an upright, respectful way. Absolutely.
Amen. Kind of transitioning into your guiding and TV, how do you find time to hunt personally?
Or has the guiding service pretty much taken over your own personal time to hunt for yourself?
Yeah, Stephen, I decided quite a while back, I would say probably a couple of decades ago, and it was a real, it was kind of a tough decision at the time, but I decided when I was going to get really serious into the guiding that, pulling the trigger or squeezing the release myself wasn't as important as being involved in hunts that were just really meaningful and really fun. And so I made the decision that I would rather be with hunters and share experiences on great hunts like we have in Arizona than to be, chasing elk in, the high country of Colorado or whatnot and have to work your tail off to maybe kill a raghorn. Again, it was a difficult decision, but I've never looked back from that. I still get to do a little hunting myself when I draw a tag. The last tag that I drew in Arizona was 2010, and I had one in 2007. So I'm definitely due. I think I'm sitting on 11 bonus points now. I was really hoping I might draw this year. But another decision that I made, Stephen, is that I'm going to apply for the better units and the better hunts so that when I do draw, I have those kind of once-in-a-lifetime experiences, and otherwise I would just as soon experience a great hunt with someone else and help them fulfill their dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember that exact time that you decided to become a guide, whether it was year or what exactly was it that made you choose that path and you're like, this is where I'm going with it now?
Yeah, I started guiding, I want to say in 1993, and again, that was due to my dad raising me in hunting, and he had just kind of started getting into guiding, and so I was, young in my 20s and, working with him, and so it was just a natural progression for me to get into the guiding with him, and so that's where it all started right there, and I wouldn't change a thing. I've just really met some lifelong friends through it. Some people who I guide are really great friends of mine, even though they're clients. So it's just a great life.
Sure, absolutely. And now I believe you're in Colorado now, right?
Yeah, I live up here most of the time, and the reason for that is because of the private land hunting that we do on the ranch that my dad owns. There's just balls there. There's actually a lot of tractor time. I think people would be surprised how me and a John Deere are, how familiar we are with each other.
Yep.
With the seat of a John Deere. I spend a lot of time on a tractor, like in the spring and summer, and it's a lot of good solitude, a lot of good thinking time, and actually you can practice your calls at times as well.
Hey, there you go. And that was perfect too, because my next question was, are you hunting on private land or public land out there?
Right. In Colorado, it's on private. In Arizona, it's all public.
Okay, perfect. What kind of difference do you see between the two out there? I'm not as familiar with Colorado. It's definitely, that will be my first out of state. I've got family there. Are elk pushed more onto private land out there due to pressure on public? It seems, my general perception of it seems like it would be heavy on public out there, just on public land in general, because of the over-the-counter, I guess. But
yeah, you're right, Stephen. If there's private land that's adjacent to public land, and that private land is managed well, and the habitat is good on that private land, it would definitely tend to push those animals when they get pressured onto private land. And I do see a lot of times when I'm watching, other people's hunts and episodes, digitally or on TV or whatnot, a lot of times they're hunting public land, but they're, really towing the line on the private because the elk are running back and forth between it. So influence your hunt. And I guess, long story short, a guy's got to be a little careful in how he hunts them and be a little cognizant of the fact that you can't push them. And elk can be gone for, if we get super aggressive on them on our private land, we can push them off of our private land and they'll be gone for 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
As a guide living out there in Colorado, when do you scout and how soon before opener do you start?
To be honest, I scout more in Arizona. Okay. And that's just because on the private land, so long, we really know the elk, what their patterns are, where they move, if they're in a certain place in the morning, where they're going to go to bed, what path they're going to take, what the wind's doing, and how that's going to influence them. So that's kind of already built into the equation. The only thing in addition to that I'll do is, of course, I'll hang trail cameras and monitor the growth of the bulls to see what they're looking like in the velvet. And I've kind of noticed the same thing in Arizona versus Colorado, in that these bulls really do tend to move from where they grow good antlers to where they rut. So you can be seeing bulls on your trail cameras, and it's getting you all excited and giddy for the upcoming season. And come the rut, they're gone, and other them. So it's always interesting that place also.
How many days are you typically spending scouting in Arizona?
Oh, I'll usually, make 3 or 4 scouting trips where I'm staying basically a week. And, doing more than just scouting. I'm doing some filming for the show and that type of thing. But yeah, I would say easily probably, 3 to 4 weeks of scouting. And then I generally like to arrive about roughly a week before the season starts to see what's going on now that the bulls are, hard antlered and bugling and, more where they're going to be for the upcoming hunts. I try not to get there too early, because a guy can get a little burned out, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because I generally go through the archery hunt and then the early rifle or muzzleloader hunt. So I definitely want to be, at the top of my game and high energy when my hunters show up, because I know it's their, lifetime hunt that they have been waiting for.
Absolutely. How many clients are you able to handle in a year or a season, I guess?
Stephen, we're guiding generally, this is kind of in general, 8 to 10 archery hunters in Arizona a year, maybe 2 or 3 early firearms hunters, and then again about 8 to 10 late rifle hunters. So, right around 20 to 25 total elk hunters in Arizona in a year. Mm-hmm. We're definitely not the biggest outfitter in Arizona, and I'm totally fine with that. I like giving guys a personalized one-on-one hunt where it's all about them and their success, and, not running a big camp. I'm definitely not an entourage kind of guy. I'm a fairly private person, if you know me. But on a one-on-one level, I feel like I'm, very friendly and approachable. I'm just not a big camp entourage kind of person, if that makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. When you're, as a guide, what is your optimal client when guiding somebody? Like, what spikes your passion and makes the whole thing just run smooth for you?
I would say the first thing is if the client shows up and wants to be a teammate of yours, so to speak, wants to get along with you, wants to develop a friendship right away. If they show that they have confidence and trust in your ability, even after guiding for over 25 years, it's amazing how your confidence can be rattled if you have a hunter who starts doubting what you're doing, where you're going, whether you're calling or not calling or blowing a bugle versus a cow call or whatnot. I really try to let these hunters know, whether they're hunting with me or one of my guides, that, the more they believe in us and the more confidence they can instill in us, the better we're going to do for them. Because I always say your hunter instincts are the best when you feel confident and you feel like you have that hunter's confidence on your side, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And of course it goes without saying, if they can hike well, if they're in good cardiovascular condition to where they can hike well, if they can shoot well, obviously if they know, if they're a bow hunter, when to draw their bow versus when not to draw their bow, the right shot angles to take, versus the wrong shot angles, all of that kind of thing goes into it. And generally there's a little bit of a learning curve and a little bit of coaching along the way, but usually it goes really well. yeah, I'm going to say 99 times out of 100, if you approach the hunt with the right attitude and a glass half full mentality, things go really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was perfect because that rolled into my next question there, which was just as an experienced guide, what's the top 3 things that you see clients struggle with?
I would say probably the biggest thing that I see, and I try to tell them this, take that extra second when you've got your pins on an elk and you think you've got him and you think you've got that perfect shot. Take that extra split second to really concentrate and focus and pick that spot and really squeeze that release so that you make a perfect shot instead of just a good shot. Because that's the one thing that I found out about these elk over the years. If you hit them perfectly, they're like a little lamb. They die fast. But if you make a marginal hit, they're like a Tyrannosaurus Rex to bring down. So that's part of it is just making that fine, excellent shot. Another thing, it seems like a lot of people will have something that's noisy in their gear. It may not be their clothing, but it could be their, bow sling, their backpack, something like that. One thing that I've noticed about elk, and this is, different than some animals, is that they are super sensitive to any unnatural noises. They just will not tolerate anything unnatural. Of course, a stick breaking, a rock rolling, that type of thing. But if they hear Velcro tearing or, the sound of noisy clothes rubbing against brush or trees, or a backpack coming off as they're getting set up and the bull's 100 yards away and they hear that backpack coming off and making all this noise, they're not going to come into that setup. So that's a couple of big things that stand out to me.
Okay, perfect. That's great knowledge. What's been your most memorable hunt that you've helped with for a client?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. I'm going to have to say there's been a lot of them, Stephen, really. They've all been really special to me. Wow, I would say probably in Arizona was guiding a gentleman from Texas. He had drawn an archery tag, and I can still remember we went out the first morning in a 7x7 in the dark, ran across the road in front of us in the headlights, and I looked at him and I said, "What do you think? You want to try for him?" And he thought I meant, "Do you want to get out of the truck and shoot him in the headlights?" And he goes, "I don't think that'd be real fair, do you?" I said, no, James, I don't mean that. I mean, let him go off in the woods. We'll drive down the road a ways and let him settle down, and then we'll, at the crack of dawn, we'll start hunting him. So, kind of got started off on a little bit of a comedy note there, but yep. He ended up taking a 360-plus bull on a call-in. I mean, this bull just came tearing in, running into the call, and he made a really good shot. He had missed a bull earlier in the hunt, and it just all ended really well. And it was kind of earlier in my guiding career, so it kind of really stands out to me. Yeah, it was a phenomenal hunt with this guy.
Do you remember when you made your very first elk video, and can you kind of just brief over that and tell us about it?
Yeah, actually, it was that video called Bugling Frenzy, and I made it with a friend named Pat at the time, and that was back in 98, 99 is when we filmed it, and we released it right at the beginning of 2000. And I don't even know that I've got a copy of it now because it was on VHS, we hadn't really transitioned to DVDs at that time. And so I can guarantee you one thing, Stephen, I'd probably hide under the table if I watched it now, because it was back in the day of the high lid hats yep. and all of that stuff. Yep. I think obviously at the time I was proud of it. We got great feedback and people thought it was awesome. And, for the time it probably was. But, you learn and you continually learn. I probably, the things that I air on my TV show now, I'd probably look at 10 years from now and wish I'd done this or that, but you do the best you can for the time,
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember what some of those lessons were that you learned from that very first video that you made?
I think the biggest thing for me is just to try to portray things real and as they happen. I'm just not a guy that likes to do a lot of, or really any phony recreate stuff. And the main reason for that for me is because of the fact that, I'm guiding people who aren't professional actors, and, this isn't their thing. It's my thing, this TV side of things. And so to, tell a guy, oh, well, stare ahead like that elk's out there in front of you, and, put your rangefinder up and act like you're getting a range, and, draw your bow as if that elk's still, you know what I'm saying, Stephen?
Yeah.
That stuff to me, I just like to try to keep it real, and I hope that the viewers can see that and appreciate it, and just to appreciate the sincerity of that, and just having it be authentic. That's the biggest thing that I've learned over the years. Yeah,
absolutely. So what's it like just in general as being an outdoorsman that has their own TV show?
Well, I've had some people say, what's it like living the dream? And I say, well, you don't really know what my day-to-day life is about. It's not always, a dream all the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure because with filming hunts, the ultimately you need to have success, and not only have success in taking an elk, but you need to get good video of it, to make an episode. And then once you've got all that and you get back home, I'm currently editing right now for this season 2 of Elk Camp that airs on Sportsman Channel starting in July, by the way, July 1st. You're up against deadlines and production guidelines, and just feeling like everything's got to be perfect. And sometimes you just drive yourself crazy, Stephen, with just going back over episodes and just, wondering if you're ever going to get it exactly right, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Sometimes perfectionism drives me nuts.
Yeah, it is definitely, like, when you're creating a piece of media and stuff, it's amazing how long we can sit there and just pick at all these different little things. And
yeah,
I find
somebody else would probably not even notice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know it, you notice it, but some, a viewer may not even notice it. So at some point you just have to back away and go, gosh, I just need to quit being so nitpicky with myself.
Yep. How has the series in itself just affected your hunting life? Do you think will there ever be a day and time where you walk away from the series and go back to just hunting, or do you think that's permanently changed everything?
Yeah, I've been filming hunts since, I want to say 95, 96 in there. My first real big step in it was buying a Canon XL1 in 1998 when they first came out. Some of your listeners might know and remember that camera, super cool, like white and red camera. I even saw it on some movies back in the day. So I've been doing this for a long time, and my motivation for it is honestly not for ego or not for glory or look at me or anything like that. I just really love that aspect of the hunt, capturing it and being able to go back and relive it, and then also be able to provide it to those hunters who hunt with me. Some of them aren't real gung-ho in the beginning about it, but then when they see encounters and, see the action, see call-ins and such, it's amazing how they transition and really get into it at that point. I do love hunting just for the pure aspect of hunting, definitely. So again, I want to keep my intentions right about the videoing, and I hope it comes across in the show that, this is about respecting the sport of hunting, respecting the animals, giving God the glory, which he certainly deserves. And that's what it's all about for me.
Absolutely. What recommendations do you have for anybody really that's looking to get into the whole hunting, show, or if they just want to do a series on YouTube or anything like that? What kind of pointers or advice would you give to somebody?
Yeah, Stephen, I think we're at a really great time in history, so to speak, as far as hunting content is involved. Guys can see great hunting content on YouTube, Instagram, TV, obviously, and everyone has their purpose. Every platform does. Just for me right now, TV makes the most sense for me right now. Although, I do have a YouTube channel, and someday we'll be loading these Elk Camp episodes on there when I'm allowed to by my contract. The biggest way that I've learned over the years, Stephen, whether it was producing videos or TV or elk calling, any of that, was actually watching others and learning from them and trying to glean something from everyone, because I think everyone has a talent and something to offer, and just approaching it with an open mind that way. Going way back, I learned a lot about video from the Primos guys when I was with them for about a decade. Calling wise, originally guys like Rocky Jacobson, Wayne Carlton, Will Primos, guys like that, I looked up to back in the day, learned from them. So it was just kind of picking what I felt their strengths were and emulating those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And transitioning into that whole elk calling, as a seasoned veteran hunter, how have you seen that elk calling industry kind of change and morph over the years?
Definitely, I believe that the quality of the calls has gotten better. The sound quality has gotten better. It seems like right now it's very competitive, the environment out there, but I think that's a good thing because it drives everyone to be better. You've got call companies like Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls, who produces my calls. I've been with them for about 10 years now. They do a phenomenal job bringing to, reality my ideas and designs on calls. You've got Primos, you've got Phelps. I think everybody drives the others to bigger and better things. So I again, just like in the video side of things, I think it all works for good, and the consumer just has a wide array of great calls out there available to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking to you and Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls, there's a new bugle tube, the Rogue bugle tube that's out. Tell us a little bit about that tube.
Yeah, the first thing about it is you'll be so amazed with the size of it versus the sound quality. It just has such a robust three-dimensional sound quality to it. And I always say, I feel like, Stephen, that's one thing that God gave me is an ear for elk tone. And I can recognize an elky tone versus a non-elky tone right away. And there's some calls that just by design are going to sound more thin and one-dimensional. And then other calls by design are going to have a more, like I said, three-dimensional, more chesty, robust sound. And this tube just has that. It's absolutely dynamite. I used it this past fall for the filming of season 2 of Elk Camp, and I'm absolutely in love with this tube. And if I could give one to every elk hunter out there, I would do it.
Yep. Yeah, a good tube is definitely, something that you want to have in your arsenal when you go out there.
Yeah, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
In your bugling sounds. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so you have your own line of elk calls. What makes them stand out, and how do they outperform other manufacturers that are on the market?
Well, obviously I'm, biased toward them, because they're mine. I just, like I said, I feel like God gifted me with, the ear for an elky tone. And I really feel like I recognize that when I hear it in a call. So on some of these calls, especially these open read calls that I have one called the Matriarch and one called the Trophy Wife. They're fairly similar. But in working with Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls, we went back and forth, I want to say 3 or 4 times on different designs, different read widths, different soundboards, different barrels, configurations. And I'm telling you, to their credit, which I really appreciate, they always are totally willing to work with me and don't get frustrated with me. And when we get it right, Stephen, you just know it. I mean, when you blow the call for the first time, whether it's not what you want or what you want, you know it right away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And right or wrong, there's There's other calls out there that I may blow that I think, yeah, this one's good. This one I could definitely use. There's others that I think, this might be right for someone else, but for me, it just doesn't have the tone I'm looking for. And then obviously the elk is is going to be the biggest indicator in how they respond to it. So it's pretty cool to take a call that, you've gone from a prototype to never blowing it at an elk and take it out in the woods and call in your first bull with it. It's pretty fulfilling for sure.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite segments of your video that I've ever watched is when you're doing an instructional video and then a bull bugles in the background, like right then and there. You're like, well, there you go. It works. So,
it's crazy. And I noticed somebody commented on YouTube, yeah, he's got a buddy back there blowing a bugle or whatever.
Oh, come on.
Steven, if you listen to it, you can tell it's an elk.
Yeah.
There's a very distinct difference between how a human sounds blowing a bugle and the real thing. And so, yeah, that was pretty crazy. And I remember telling myself, yeah, I definitely need to recognize that something happened behind me there, but I still need to keep my wits and composure about me and finish doing this, calling segment.
Yep.
We got through it.
Yep. What's your favorite go-to elk reed? So if you had a basket full of your different reeds and you could only grab one and take it with you, which one are you grabbing?
Are you talking an open reed or a mouth reed?
Let's do one of each.
Okay. Open reed, I would probably have to lean toward the matriarch. That was my very first call that I did with Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls. It's still every bit as effective as it was back in 2010 when we first started with it. I always say, Stephen, and I would say this to your listeners, that it doesn't matter how old a call is, what the name of it is, how it's marketed, how it's packaged. The main thing is, how does it sound and how does an elk respond to it? That's the biggest thing. So for me, that matriarch hands down has just been so solid and consistent in producing results over this past decade for me, that if I could just take one call to the woods, that would be it for sure. If I could take a mouth reed with me, I would probably lean toward this new Elk Camp reed that we came out for 2019. It just has a real nice three-dimensional full sound to it. Just has great elk tone. So that would be the mouth reed that I would lean to for sure, because even though I've done quite a bit more bugling in the last couple of years, I've added that more into my arsenal, I still really don't want to confuse people. I would still say that I'm more of a lover than a fighter when I go to the elk woods.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I foresee myself being more of an aggressive caller. I just kind of seem to like that tactic a little bit more. How often are we wanting to switch out our calls? So, we've got these mouth reeds and stuff with the latex and everything, and especially us here in the western, side of the United States with drier conditions and stuff like Arizona and Colorado and maybe heat. I take mine and practice with them and leave them in the car sometimes, and I notice they're getting a little cracked and stuff. How often do we want to swap out those calls?
I would say, Stephen, as soon as you notice the sound quality of them degrade, and you'll know it.
Okay.
I mean, you will tell right away when you go to blow a cow call or a bugle, and all of a sudden that reed is different. If you're bugling on it, you'll notice, because it does what I call crack out on you. It kind of, you can maybe hit that high tone, but all of a sudden it kind of goes flat on you. Then you know that reed has, that latex is stretched out beyond the point of it having a quality sound. I sure try to be diligent about keeping my calls, at room temperature or in a cool place in the shade. I know it's hard because we like to practice in our vehicles, but a hot vehicle is the worst place for latex for sure. A matter of fact, today I just noticed that one of my calls that was in a call case had mold growing on it. Ooh. And I went to stick it in my mouth and I went, oh boy.
Got your dose of penicillin.
Yeah, as bad as I wanted to see if it still sounded good, I walked it over and threw it in the trash. But yeah, the mouth reeds definitely have a shelf life for sure. So to be honest with you, if I've got a mouth reed type that I like, I'm going to want to go to the woods. If I've got an archery hunt, or I'm guiding an archery hunt and then an early rifle, I'm going to want to have 2 or 3 of those minimum on hand, because they can definitely go let you down and go down on you. As far as open reed calls, the biggest thing that I find with my open reed calls, they'll last you a lifetime really if you take care of them. The only thing that you need to update on those is that castration ring that goes around the soundboard.
Yep, that little O-ring type thing.
Exactly. It'll get stretched out over time, and again, same thing. You'll pick up the call, and all of a sudden, it won't have that nice break and that nice tonal quality that you're looking for, and it just becomes a little harder to get quality sound out of. And generally, if you replace that castration ring, it will freshen the sound of the call right up. And I've told people over the years, those are very easy to get. You can get those at any, feed supply type store, Tractor Supply, etc. The ones on mine are just a green castration ring is all they are.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
How do you go about choosing your best elk reed or reeds for a hunt? You're going out there, and you said, you want 2 to 3, as far as speaking to backups and everything, and making sure that you're not stuck out there without a call or anything like that. How do you go about that selection process?
Yes. First of all, I definitely want to have an open reed call that I feel super confident in, because I definitely feel like I can lean on that when the chips are down. And I find that from day to day, sometimes I feel more confident in blowing an open reed call, and some days I feel more confident blowing a mouth reed. As far as the mouth reeds, I definitely want to have, 2 to 3 reeds tuned up for cow calling that I feel confident in. And then I want to have probably 2 reeds for bugling that I'm feeling are, hitting that right tone. So I'm probably going to be carrying in the neighborhood of, anywhere from 4 to 5 mouth reeds in a call case. And then, my matriarch and trophy wife open reed calls. And then, of course, a bugle tube with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Elk calling tips and tricks. What kind of things can you throw out there for us?
Yeah, Stephen, there's some rules about calling, like, number 1, you've got to obey the wind. That's got to be your most important factor in calling to a bull. If the wind's not right, I even say that if you have, I don't know how to say it, a quartering wind to where the elk can easily divert a little bit as he comes to the call and get your wind, that's a problem. So I want to get the wind so much in my favor that bull has to circle completely around me in order to get my wind. And when you do that, you have to get close to them, because of the fact they feel uneasy about not having the wind to their advantage, because that's their biggest defense is their nose. So I always like to, kind of make it a rule that I definitely want to be inside of 150 yards, and depending on the terrain and vegetation, I'll get closer than that if I can. Have that wind definitely at my advantage, and then, try to coax that bull in with calls at that point. And when you're close like that, it's important, if that bull hasn't heard you calling up to that point, that you introduce yourself just a little bit gently, especially if you're cow calling, to where you don't just blow a real harsh, loud call right at him right in the beginning. I found that you can, once you get him to respond, you can warm him up to the sound and get him hotter and hotter by doing that. But I always try to be a little bit subtle and sweet in the beginning. The other thing that I would say, Stephen, that I learn more about every year is that every bull in every scenario is different. And all bulls are going to have a different temperament. I would say that you can roughly divide them up into 3 categories. I don't say that elk are like humans, but you can, in a little bit of a way, compare it in these categories. I would say there's bulls that are fairly passive and non-aggressive, that you kind of have to be gentle with. There's bulls that are in the middle, that can kind of be passive depending on the day, or they can be more aggressive depending on the day or what's going on with the cows. The cows definitely dictate what goes on with the rut. And then there's bulls that are just aggressive, kamikaze, fighters. I can remember an old friend of mine years ago asking me, he came to Unit 7 West on my archery hunt, and he asked me, if he's from Tennessee, he asked me if the bulls were fighters or not. I said, what do you mean by, are they fighters? He goes, yeah, well, they come in looking for a fight with their eyes rolled back in their head, slobbering everywhere. Right. I said, well, I guess we'll find out. But so in recognizing that, I try to take that to the field with me and, be aware and conscious of that as I'm calling to a bull, and assess what type of bull he is. And then next, the big thing, Stephen, is whether he's a herd bull or a satellite bull. I found that most satellite bulls will come in eager to a cow call, especially if the timing's right, their hormones are right, they're in the rut, they're looking for company. They will readily come to a cow call. Now, amazingly, some satellite bulls won't. I've called some satellite bulls in, even some small bulls that didn't want to bugle, didn't want to respond to a cow call for whatever reason, that would come to a bugle. But 9 times out of 10, I'm probably calling my satellite bulls in with cow calling. I'm finding more and more, and that's where I've transitioned in the last couple of years, and bugling has become more in my arsenal and more important to me, that herd bulls, that's the sound that you're going to get them with, that you're going to kill them with, is with the right kind of bugling sounds. And that's because of the fact that they've already got what they want when they have cows. And I always say they subscribe to the motto, a bird in hand is better than 2 in the bush. Yep. So, if you're 200, 150 yards away blowing a cow call at them, 99 out of 100 herd bulls are just going to sit there and bugle aggressively at you for you to come to them. And it's going to sound real good, and you might even think that they're coming to you, but as you call more at them, generally they're going to start drifting away from you. And a lot of times their cows will start pulling them away. Yeah. So I found that with these herd bulls, what you've got to do is you've got to get in super close to them. You've got to put them in that fight or flight decision mode. And then I say, for lack of a better term, you got to punch them in the mouth with that bugle. You got to bugle like you mean it. And it's kind of sounds like you're my kind of guy as far as that's concerned, because you just mentioned that, you're an aggressive caller. And I would say when I bugle, Stephen, that's something that I definitely don't do half-heartedly, because I feel like you can say to a bull, you can say, shut your mouth, like Ariana Grande would say it, or you can say it like a big, mean, bad dude would say it. Do you know what I'm saying? Yep. The difference?
Yeah, throwing that challenge out there for sure, and challenging his authority. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Are you raking and thrashing tree branches and all that as well when you're doing this, or is that not really your style?
You know what? I've raked over the years, and I've had some bulls. Definitely, that's made the difference. I won't say, though, that I've done a lot of that to have success. Okay. It's mostly just been the sounds, the calling that has got the bulls to come in. Although I definitely think that, raking and making a ruckus can definitely add realism to a setup when you're trying to get a bull to come in, for sure. So it definitely has its place.
Yeah. At what point are you ceasing the calling? Like when he's gotten into a certain distance, when do you just stop?
If I'm calling for myself, I'm definitely wanting that bull to show up to the setup just a little bit unsure of the exact location of where I'm at, because their depth perception is just so good. And if you continually blow from that location, which if you're hunting solo, you are doing that, they're going to come in and they're just going to pinpoint that location. And if the terrain and vegetation is not right, that's when they hang up at, say, 75, 100 yards if you're, like in pine country, and they're going to look and they're going to want to see another elk. And if you were to have any sort of shot, it's going to be a frontal shot. So calling for myself, I do want to stop once I know they're approaching and only call just enough to keep them coming. By contrast, when I'm guiding someone, Stephen, I want to be far enough back to where that bull cannot see me or he can't look and see my calling position. And I found that bulls will continue to come as long as they can't see your calling position. They'll keep coming toward that call. And I call more frequently when I'm calling for a hunter than I do when I'm hunting solo, because I want to keep that bull reeled in, so to speak. I've just found that if you can be too aggressive, but then you can easily be too passive. And there's so much going on out there in the elk woods during the rut. There's other bulls bugling, there's cows smelling good, all of that plays into it. And if you're just a little too passive, that bull just kind of gets the attitude of, well, I don't think it's worth my time to, walk with the wind wrong 100 yards over there and see what that little mouse is over there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This was one thing I didn't write down, but do you ever use the decoys?
Absolutely.
Do you?
Absolutely. I would say the last 3 years, I've become a real believer in them, and it's because of experience with them. You guys, your listeners, I'm sure some of them have used decoys, but if they haven't, you'd be amazed at what you can get away with decoys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really perked my ears, because you said he comes in and he's looking for that elk. And so maybe being able to display like that cow rump or something like that could close that final distance between 75, to 40 or 20.
Yeah. And the best one that I've seen come out recently, I've been using a Montana decoy, and as a guide, that's fine to have that occupying a hand, as the guide. Yep. But when you're a hunter, you need your hands free. And I believe it's called Ultimate Predator Gear.
Okay.
They're on Instagram. You're probably aware of them.
Uh-huh.
They make those decoys that are basically, they mount on your bow and you can shoot through.
Yeah.
Those are phenomenal, and the video proof is there. If you look at their Instagram page,
yep,
just phenomenal. And again, I would just say you'd be amazed at what you can get away with those decoys.
Absolutely, yeah. Can you bullet point for us a few main types of elk calls and then just demonstrate those?
Yes, and I'm going to make a disclaimer. I'm always a little rusty when I'm in the off season and editing and doing all that stuff. But yeah, definitely, I'd be happy to. So as far as I'll do bull sounds and cow sounds, and I'll instead of demonstrating everything, I'll demonstrate the calls that I do.
Okay.
That I do when I'm actually out there that work for me. So the first one would be, I've had a lot of success using a lip ball. Some people call it a display bugle. Mm-hmm. And it's going to sound like this. I'll put the phone down so I can blow it.
I love that lip ball. That's one that I have a hard time getting. It's been probably the trickiest thing for me to pick up so far.
Yeah, it's just basically, your tongue's on the reed, you're putting pressure on the reed to get that sound, but then you're pushing the sound through vibrating lips.
Yep.
And it's just a matter of kind of experimenting with, the tightness of your lips versus, medium tension on your lips, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Just experimenting with different lip tension and vibration to get the sound that you want.
Yeah. Back in high school, I had played trumpet, and so I understand the concept. I just haven't done it in so long. It's been a hard time trying to get that vibration to come back, and but I'm sure I'll get it and eventually.
If anything, I noticed, Stephen, that to my liking anyway, this is just my opinion, so you can take it right or wrong. Mm-hmm. I think most people that I hear maybe vibrate their lips a little too tightly.
Okay.
A little too trumpety, so to speak, instead of a little more raspy and a little more rank, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I like maybe that more heavier, nastier lip ball sound.
Yeah.
So that's that lip ball sound. Then I'll also do what most people refer to as a challenge bugle, and that's just a very aggressive, high-pitched bugle. Honestly, I don't start it with a growl. I don't end it with a growl. I just go into a high, strong pitch, and then I cut it off like I mean business. So I'll try to do my best rendition of that on the phone here.
Okay.
Just like that. And, to my liking, I say if you're ringing your own ears, that's when you're hitting the right tone and the right volume. It should actually be a little uncomfortable to your ears when you blow that.
Yeah. Well, I must be doing it right because my girls here at home, they cover their ears every time I throw that one out. So
there you go, man. There you go. You got it right. And then I also think, if you have chuckling and grunting in your arsenal, it definitely can add realism and authenticity, to fool a bull that may be a little hesitant. I can think of some bulls specifically that didn't respond to anything until I threw in chuckling or grunting. And to me, that just adds more emotion and punctuation, if you will, into the call. Mm-hmm. So let me, first I'll do a lip ball, and then I'll go into grunts to let you hear what I do when I make that sound.
Perfect.
Okay, so that would be, again, a lip ball with grunts. And then chuckling is different than grunting in that to me it's a little higher pitched. The cadence is faster. It's kind of more laughy sounding, if you will. Yeah. So I'll do like a challenge bugle and then go into chuckling.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. And again, I wouldn't say I'm totally on my A game, Steven, at this time of year.
That sounds pretty good.
A lot of it, to be honest, is getting your lungs in condition. It takes a lot of lung power to blow those sounds, especially the grunts and chuckles. It'll really suck the air out of you.
Yeah.
So now that I've blown my air out, let me transition to cow calling.
Okay.
What I'll do first is I'll just blow what I call just standard cow calls on the matriarch, and this has kind of been, my go-to call over the years. I've definitely called in more elk than, any other call, just like this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just something like that. I'm not doing a lot of waviness or variation with it. I'm just basically blowing it nice and mellow like that. I don't know how well it translates over the phone, but that's that on the matriarch. I'll also blow it on the trophy wife. It's going to sound just a little different because the barrel is plastic on this reed.
Okay.
Okay, and then going into mouth reeds, basically I blow maybe 3 different sounds. I would say 3 different sounds on a mouth reed. The first one's just going to be, again, just what I refer to as just cow talk, just standard, standard contact muse. Going to be something like this. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then to turn it up into more excitement, which I really like to do because I've found that over the years it really gets a reaction, more of a reaction out of animals, is to blow it in a more excited manner. And I'm just putting a little more tongue pressure to it is basically all I'm doing. And it's giving it this sound. It's louder, the tone is higher pitched. It just seems to convey more emotion for sure.
Yeah.
That's what I'm shooting for out there, is to trigger a response out of a bull by, appealing to his emotion as well. And then the third sound that I use in the scale of emotion, just for lack of a better term, I originally, called it the estrus scream, just because that's what it sounded like to me. Not saying that this is exactly what cows do when they're in heat, because I have heard cows make this sound at other times of the year, but I've heard the intensity of it, definitely picks up during the rut, and it sounds kind of like this, Stephen.
Okay.
And that call, unlike the other calls, when I'm in the woods and I decide to blow that call, I will basically blow that call every time my left foot hits the ground, so to speak.
Wow.
And my personality type is a little more, like I told you earlier, I'm more of a private person, maybe a little more on the shyer side. So I don't hit the woods with that call out on the forefront. I generally, not to my credit, I'll have to do that when nothing else is working, or when someone like my cousin is with me and says, Steve, get out that call and blow it all the way back to the truck. What do you have to lose? And
Right.
Stephen, it's amazing how many times when nothing else was working, elk weren't even bugling, and you start walking and making that sound like you're just trolling through the woods like a cow would be if she was separated and alone, but looking to be bred, and you're making that sound. Man, all of a sudden a bull will fire up, and next thing you know, he's coming in hot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are basically the sounds right there. 99 times out of 100, those sounds that I just covered are what I use in the woods.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's cool how it speaks to having multiple things in your repertoire and being able to kind of pull certain things out when you need to. For instance, I was hunting with a couple of buddies from Christian Hunters of America, and we were doing turkey hunting, but they weren't responding to any of the slates or a box call.
Yeah.
But then our friend put a mouth read in and did a couple, turkey calls from his mouth read, and all of a sudden, boom, the tom just gobbled back immediately. And so, I mean, you never know. You want to be able to have those multiple options on you, because if nothing else works, that last resort that you have, or that last thing that you choose to pull out, might be the one that gets it done.
Absolutely. I would go back and I would say to your listeners that definitely, if I had to say that my go-to sound over the years that I've had the best success with would be quality sounds on an open reed call, cow calling. So I would say start there, master that, and then progress into the other sounds. Don't try to eat the whole elephant in one bite, if you know what I mean. Just start out with crawling, walking, running, if that makes sense, and progress your way through it, because calling is a journey, not a destination. Yeah. And just look to perfect the craft, and you'll get better and better as you go. I still feel like I have, a lot of progress to be made. I feel like every year that's my goal, to go out there and get better and more authentic sounding with it than being satisfied with where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's perfect, because you rolled right into that. And that was, what's your typical calling sequence from start to finish? From the moment that you land at your designated spot, what's the first thing that you're going to do?
Yeah, usually there's usually two scenarios. The best one is when the bulls are bugling on their own. In that instance, if they're bugling on their own, I'm not going to say anything to them. If I'm on them in the dark, I'm going to just let them do their thing, let them bugle without me chiming in. I know it's very hard. A lot of times it's very tempting to chime in and start calling at them in the dark, but I don't. So what I'll do is I'll try to make sure that I get really close to them with the wind right in that gray light of the morning. And so when that first light cracks where you could call that bull in and kill him, I want to be in that zone where my calling is going to be meaningful to him. And if he's what I perceive as a satellite bull, I'm going to try cow calling on him first.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
And then if that works, I'm going to stick with what works. I'm not going to change it up. Like if I blow the matriarch and he jumps all over it, and I can tell he's loving that sound. I'm not going to mix in a bugle or a chuckle or a different type of cow sound or whatnot. I'm going to stick with what's working. The other scenario is obviously if, the bulls aren't bugling. Typically what I do in that scenario, Stephen, is I'm going to stay mobile, and I'm not going to get committed to an area where there's no bugling going on. So in that instance, I'm going to be, moving around, cow calling fairly loudly, and mixing in bugling as well to try to get a response. And then again, a lot of times I say it's so much about distance with these bulls. It means so much different to them if you're bugling a half a mile away from them versus 100 yards away from them. And then I try to assess whether that bull is a herd bull or a satellite bull as I'm approaching him. And usually you can tell if a herd bull has cows because he bugles more frequently. He just has a real aggression and angst in his bugling. And I would say to your listeners, if you haven't done a lot of elk hunting, the more of it you do, the more of an understanding you'll develop and an instinct for it. When you hear a bull bugling, you can generally tell, again, by the frequency of his bugles, that the angst and aggression in it, whether he's a satellite bull or a herd bull. And then, adjust your calling accordingly.
Absolutely. Well, what are some of the key mistakes that you see callers making while elk calling?
I would say, Stephen, the biggest things that I've seen over the years, number one is not carrying a wind checker. You've absolutely got to obey the wind. I think that's probably the third time I've mentioned wind in this podcast. So besides my calls, if I don't have my wind checker, I feel naked out there. I've got to have a wind checker. And then also is what I had alluded to also is distance. It just means so much more to an animal when you're closer than when you're further away. I've encountered hunters out there in the woods who are actually down, set up with an arrow nocked. There's a bull bugling a half a mile away, and I'm approaching that bull. I don't know that hunter's there with my hunter, and we come up on a guy. He's set up. He's got his face mask on or whatever. He's got an arrow nocked, and his eyes are all wide and wild. And I happen to notice him, and I'll say to him, "Are you, looking to hunt that bull that's bugling out there?" And they'll, give me a nod like yes. And the first thing I want to say is, "Man, you got to get 10 times closer than you are right now." So that's the biggest thing. That I would say. I'm always respectful of those guys. I'm not going to march right through and go after that bull. I'm just going to tell them good luck and veer off, and hopefully there's another bull bugling somewhere else that I can go get tight with. But yeah, I would say, not taking the wind into big enough importance, and then not getting close enough are the two biggest things that I see.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some tactics that you use to find, those big bulls that people are after?
That's a good question, Stephen, because you can't always tell how big a bull is by his bugle. I would say that in general, you can tell a mature bull versus a young bull, like those, sub 3-year-old bulls, those 3 and 2-year-old bulls. They're going to have a different kind of lighter sound to them. Most big bulls are either going to have, a heavy raspy sound, or they're going to sound 3 ways, in my opinion. They're going to have a heavy, raspy, 3-dimensional quality that just sounds really mean, or they're going to have a real strong, high-pitched, just super strong, high-pitched, 3-dimensional sound. Mm-hmm. Or number 3, they're going to have a weird sound, a really weird sound. Sometimes a really big bull can sound really odd and strange. Huh. And those kind of bulls intrigue me with that kind of bugle. But mainly I'm just listening for those bulls that are bugling, the loudest and the most aggressive, because in general, that to me is going to be your more dominant bulls. Many times, unfortunately, that's a bull with cows, and they're harder to deal with, obviously. But that's how I kind of approach it. And I tell my hunters, if we hunt those big aggressive bugles during this hunt, at some point we're going to encounter the right bull.
Yeah. Absolutely. How many other guides or other hunters have you bumped into because of calling into one another?
Boy, year to year it varies. I remember one particular year in Unit 9, me and this guy who I like, and I have to smile when I say this, but we were clear over on the west side one morning and bumped into each other. They came into my setup. I was calling, and the bull was bugling a bunch, and probably the bugling brought him in more than my calling. But so we had a nice little visit, and then I moved probably 20 miles from where I was that morning to a totally different area, and danged if I didn't encounter the same guy that evening. So I laughed, and I said to him, I said, "So tell me, where are you going to be in the morning so I know where not to go?"
All right.
Yeah.
You take this side, I'll take that side.
Yeah, it doesn't happen that often, believe it or not. It's kind of amazing once you get out and you get, say a mile or more from the truck. Mm-hmm. You just don't seem to encounter as many people. Definitely some units lend themselves more so to that versus other units. I know you've got a tag in a pretty popular with a lot of tags unit this year, Stephen, and yep. You may have more hunter interference than I've had over the years. But again, I know you're young and physical, and you'll probably be able to get away from people just by getting off the roads, getting away from the truck.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to pound ground, but I do. I anticipate bumping into a few people for sure.
You bet. Yep.
Have you ever utilized a tree stand for elk hunting?
One time.
Okay.
I've had one hunter kill an elk out of a tree stand, and I have to be honest, it was not my tree stand. It was another hunter's, and we didn't get there super early or anything like that. I don't believe he was, actively hunting that. He probably had multiple locations, but we got there initially. We were going to sit in a blind, and my hunter looked over and he said, "Steve, would you mind if I tried out, getting in that tree stand?" And I said, "No, if you feel comfortable." And so, that was the one time, but just the one time. And Stephen, that's my only hunter who's taken a bull off of water with me personally guiding. Every other one's been off a call-in.
Wow.
So,
what is an unheard of or common tip or trick that you use for elk or any species really?
A common trick that I use?
Yeah, a tip or trick or something, just a rabbit out of a hat kind of thing that you use.
I would have to say, again, going back to that ester stream that I call sound, just pulling that out of my back pocket when nothing else seemingly works. And again, I just tell myself all the time that I need to, bring that more up to the forefront of the lineup, more so than I do. But it just seems to produce really dramatic results. A lot of times you'll have 2 and 3 bulls coming at that sound. So I would say that's kind of my, rabbit out of the hat. But again, I don't want people to think that they have to have that sound in their arsenal to call a lot of elk in, because you don't.
Sure. It's just a good option to have there just in case.
Sure. And it's a sound that I feel like if you blow it like I'm blowing it like right now, not so great, because it's the off season. You could actually scare elk with it because it can sound not right. Okay. If you know what I mean. It can sound more like predator-ish type calling instead of elky.
Yep. What's your biggest bull to date, and what state was it taken in?
For me personally, or with a client?
For you personally.
For me personally, I've taken 3 bulls that are, all in that 340 to 350 range, and that's been the top end for me. Mm-hmm. I have never drawn my first choice in Arizona, Stephen, to date.
Wow.
So I've always had second choice hunts, not minimizing, some of these units in Arizona, but there is a difference. So really, I go to the woods with that mentality of, if I see that 340, 350 bull, a bull that legitimately scores that is a very big bull without real visible weaknesses. And so that's typically my goal. If I had, say a unit 9 or unit 10 or unit 23 tag this year with the kind of moisture that we've had in Arizona, I might up it. be looking for that real special bull. But I'm still personally, on the hunt for that kind of a bull. But not to say I'm not satisfied with those, 340s, 350 bull that I have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Transitioning from hunter to guide, how have your personal goals as a hunter transformed with that transition, and what are they now?
I would say that my biggest goal as a guide is to give that hunter just a special, one-of-a-kind experience, to where when he leaves, he just has that wow, that's the best time of my life hunting that I've ever had. And that's the best personal interaction that I've ever had with a person, as far as, not what you would say as a friend, but someone who became your friend.
Right.
So as a hunter, I always wanted to have that glass half full mentality, glass half full mentality, where I believe that all it takes is one bull to change the whole outlook of your hunt. You just need that one animal to act right and to come into that call, and that's what you're hunting for. And I like to keep my hunters reminded of that, because sometimes it doesn't always go according to script.
Sure.
You can have days where they're not bugling well, you can have full moons where they act funny, you can have bad weather, all of that kind of thing. But my biggest goal is to not have a Debbie Downer attitude about me, because I feel like if you keep your spirits up, you keep your hunter's spirits lifted, you're complimentary toward him, he's complimentary toward you, you hunt as a team, good things always happen, Stephen, when that's the case, whether it's on day 1, day 5, day 13, or whatever. Good things are going to happen if you keep that positive outlook.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you always got to keep that, like you said, keep that positive attitude and everything, and that just sets the tone for everything going forward.
Yes.
Living now in Colorado, but previously being an Arizona resident, what are some of the primary differences that you see between each elk between those states? For instance, I've heard that Arizona carries more quality trophy bulls, but Colorado has far more opportunity just due to the larger elk population.
Yeah, you nailed it right on the head. Definitely, there's more elk in Colorado, but the quality, widespread quality, is definitely not as good as it is in Arizona.
Okay.
And that's what you get from our Game and Fish having these limited entry tags. Which I think is a good thing, because it's a limited resource. You have to limit the amount of people out there so that when you do draw, you have a quality experience. I do feel like that in the last 10 years, our quality in Arizona has slipped, which it has in a lot of the West. I think this year, though, we're going to see some real bomber trophy bulls taken because of the moisture.
Yeah.
And bulls that were, all the bulls were droughty last year. Bulls who are genetically gifted this year could just absolutely explode.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be some real special bulls taken. I'm just envious of those with tags, I'm telling you, man. So I'm envious of you, Stephen.
I don't know if I sent you the video or not, but I got to send you a video of 2 bulls that I have feeding together, because I thought I was off of photos. I thought I was getting some big bulls, and then I pulled this video, and it was like monstrosity difference, night and day difference from what I've seen on my photos. Yeah. And even for a very heavily hunted area that I'll be in, I can't believe how big these bulls are. So it's a true testament.
Yeah, you're right. You'll know it. And I always tell people, a big bull right away, because you can see it in their brow tines and thirds, but especially by when you get to late June, early July.
Yeah.
A big bull is a big bull already. He's a fully formed 6-point, and all he has is some tipping out to do when you get to the 4th of July. But I've had people send me photos or videos of 5x5s, in early July, and I'm like, that's going to be a 5x5. That's what he is.
Yeah. These guys are pretty ginormous already, and I can't even imagine. So, I see that you're shooting some of these new, is it Bergara? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Bergara.
Some of the new Bergara rifles a lot lately. Is that your preferred method to take elk, is with rifle, or are you still just an archery guy as well if you're out hunting for yourself?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I love elk and I love the calling game, and that's the main thing for me is hunting them when they're bugling and there's calling interaction to be had.
Yeah.
I'm definitely more of an archery hunter myself, and I exclusively apply for archery hunts when I apply.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess you could say I'm definitely a dyed-in-the-wool archery hunter, but I definitely enjoy guiding both type of hunts when the elk are bugling. I do absolutely love these Bergara rifles for several reasons. Number one, they have great looks, which I think is important for any product, camouflage or anything out there. Number two is they come from the factory with a great trigger on them that's also adjustable, user adjustable, but it's a great trigger right out of the box. And then I have found with the three that I have that they are just so inherently accurate out of the box, and they're not finicky with loads and different type of ammo and whatnot. You may have noticed that I posted a video on Instagram here fairly recently, within the last couple of months. I was shooting a Bergara 7 mag rifle last year to get it ready for hunters, and that thing was shooting 1/4 to 1/2 inch groups.
Jeez.
And I was shooting off the tailgate of my truck with a lead sled.
Yeah. So
it wasn't the total optimal scenario, and I would say I was definitely the weakest link in the equation. And that rifle was just driving tacks. The other thing that I like about them, Stephen, that I think to me is no longer even I don't know how to say it. For me, a rifle would have to have this feature for me to even be interested in it. Okay. And that's that it's pre-threaded for a muzzle, not a muzzle brake, but a suppressor.
Suppressor, yeah.
And these Bergara rifles are pre-threaded so that you can, thread a suppressor on them. And I'm telling you, once you shoot suppressed, you'll never want to go back. The noise level, the 7 mag, when you shoot it, it's sounds more like a 22 mag. It doesn't ring your ears at all. It cuts the recoil way down, probably to more like a 6.5 Creedmoor or a 243 level.
Wow, nice.
So yeah, I'm just totally sold, on hunting suppressed. And, I think it gets a bad rap because people, kind of associate suppressed with silencer, and criminals use silencers, but we as hunters, we're using it to be quieter in the woods, to take care of our hearing, to not ring the ears of people who are around us. As a guide, I can say it's wonderful to be with a hunter who's shooting a suppressed rifle. It's just amazing, and then you don't spook the animals away as bad either.
Yep. Yeah, especially if you're a guy that's got multiple clients and stuff, you want to be able to get other people in there and
exactly
not just blow all your chances.
Yep.
So we've got a few listener questions here that I kind of pulled from Instagram. I threw things out there, opportunity for people that wanted to ask stuff. Christian Beps says, any tips for a brand new caller? Best call for a newbie with a rut tag?
Yes, I would say to Christian, like I alluded to earlier, I would say without apology to buy and practice on an open reed call first thing. I mean, I definitely think someone needs to add mouth reeds to their arsenal for sure at some point. But if if you're new into calling, if you can pick up an open reed call and get to where you can blow that call with control and you can sound mellow and sexy on it, is how I like to say it. And, just watch YouTube videos of good callers and calling demonstration and get that tonal quality that you're looking for. You're going to be amazed at how well you can do. So, I'll also say unapologetically, try my Matriarch and Trophy Wife. They're great open reed calls.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, there's no shame in a plug. So, and that's one thing too that I've done, Christian. Now that I've gotten down the sounds, I can make the certain tones and pitches and stuff. One thing that I'm doing to kind of fine tune and progress my personal calling is I just YouTube all day long actual videos of the elk themselves calling. So I've watched Steve, I've watched Jay Scott and all these other people, and they've taught me the base of things. and they can still teach me more, obviously, but now I want to mimic the elk and hit their tones and get right in there in their sweet spot. And so I listen to their sequences, their calls. So I'll just Google elk in rut bugling or whatever, or the cows. And so that's been my kind of transition lately that I've done.
Yeah, amen to that, Stephen. Yeah, and good luck, Christian. Good luck on your...
Good luck, bud. Open Country Optics, they asked, when we usually rely primarily on cow calls. When is the right time to hit that bugle hard?
Yeah, I know we talked quite a bit about this on this podcast. And I know from my, elk call of the day posts on Instagram, it appears like I'm bugling 99 times versus 1 time for cow calling. Stephen, bugling's more fun to listen to. It's more entertaining to listen to. So, that's why you hear me bugling more on those elk calls of the day on Instagram. But I would say I am still overall, like I said earlier, a lover versus a fighter. And I'm going to work a bull with cow calling more so than I am with bugling, especially if it's a satellite bull. Like I said earlier, if I'm dealing with a herd bull, 9 times out of 10, the way I'm going to get him, if I get him, is going to be with bugling and with aggressive bugling. And I know it's such a contradiction when I say I cow call, I'm a lover and I'm being, more subtle and sweet. Yeah. Versus rude and aggressive and punching him in the nose. But when I get in close to a herd bull, I want to almost get fired up and mad at him myself, and I want to put that into the call.
Yeah.
So that for me is basically whether I'm dealing with a satellite bull or a bull with cows dictates whether I cow call or bugle.
Perfect. Yep. And then George Jonah asks, he just said late season calling.
Okay. I'm going to assume that George has a late season tag, be it either archery or rifle.
Yep.
I would definitely say that glassing is my biggest tactic on those late hunts. But I have had some success with calling on the late hunts. I've even called some bulls in here and there on late hunts by cow calling. Mm-hmm. I can remember one particular evening I was with a hunter and we glassed all afternoon, all evening. There was only about 15 minutes of light left. And I thought, Stephen, what do I have to lose at this point?
Yeah.
So I blew a few cow calls, and a bull who was out of sight, timbered up, too far up on the mountain to see and timbered up, he bugled and came trotting down the hill in plain view.
Wild.
Shot him.
Just wild.
Yeah. So I would say don't leave your calls at home if you have a late season hunt. And another thing where they come in really handy is if, and this definitely helps if you have someone with you, obviously, is, you always want to make your first shot count. That's your best shot when you're shooting at an unalerted animal that doesn't know you're there. But I have literally had late hunters empty their gun at an elk or a group of bulls, and I'm calling as they're shooting. I'm typically blowing loud cow calls, and those bulls will just stand there and look and not even move. So, again, have those calls at the ready. The colder it is, the more susceptible they're going to be to sticking if you're blowing an open reed call. So you're going to want to keep that call down underneath layers of clothing to keep it more up to your body temperature, because a cold reed with warm breath blown across it will quickly condensate and start sticking on you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
All right. KW Scott says, what are his thoughts on early archery bull in AZ Unit 8?
Well, my personal experience in that unit is that the bulls can be real temperamental and the bugling can be really hot and cold. So I would tell him to, hunt with the mentality of he may have to hunt different parts of the unit and look for where they're bugling, because I always say with a bow, you can't kill them if they're not bugling. I mean, even if you have a 400 bull located that you want to take, that you want to hunt, if that dude's not bugling, he becomes very hard to kill. So in a unit like that, many times what you may have to do, even, if there's a full moon like there's going to be at the start of the hunt, is go out in the middle of the night, like at 11, 12, 1 in the morning, and try to find pockets of bugling and where there's some rutting going on, and focus on those areas. And obviously that can change as the hunt progresses on. But that's been my biggest experience, is that many units, not just 8, but many units can suffer from that hit and miss bugling. And then also you've got to keep yourself pumped up and have that mentality of, it just takes one. I'm just looking for that one bull, that one big bull to act right, to be aggressive, to come into my calling, and I will get it done when that happens, and I will be ready for it when it happens. So with that said, I like to try to keep myself fairly rested and not get myself totally worn out. I know on these archery hunts, we're getting up at 3:30, 3:45 in the morning because, it gets light early. So if I have to, I will sneak in a nap during the day at whatever time I can to stay rested. And that helps keep my attitude good. Yeah. But just, keep that glass half full mentality, and it just takes one, and hunt those pockets where they're bugling. Look for and hunt those.
Absolutely. And if one was to take a nap during the day, is there a specific time frame? Can you narrow it down to even that, as to when, you should maybe take a rest and recover? Or say you're doing the tree stand or a blind thing, when do you want to take a break? Like, what's a go-to time frame for that?
I would say mostly, if and when I do it, Stephen, would be late morning, like say, 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Okay. Is that just because they rut hard all morning long and then they kind of die down a little bit and then come out?
They're going to shut down. They're going to go bed down. Okay. They're going to be pretty stationary and pretty quiet for that time. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, especially if there's a full moon, sometimes they can crank up in the middle part of the day, but again, that's going to be a little later than that, later morning time. And there's some people who can just go and go and go and never need a nap. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those guys. But if there's elk bugling, I'm the first one there. I'm ready. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I also realize that I'm doing this for, like a month solid for those Arizona rut hunts. And so I can't get myself completely worn down and haggard out to where I'm not on my A game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a lot now, 3 or 4 times throughout this podcast, things about the moon phases and stuff. And I know a lot of people are indifferent on it. I personally believe in it, but talk to us a little bit just about the elk and how they operate with the moon phases. Because I've noticed deer, I'm not going to see any movement during the day after a full moon. How do they kind of operate with that, or what's been your experience that you've seen?
Yeah, Stephen, I think it controls them more than we even know. I know scientists have been able to take whitetails in captivity and completely change the rut and have them rutting in the spring and shedding antlers in the fall. So by controlling the light that they get. So, the length of the day is what triggers the rut in the first place. And then that moon, I've heard it said that most of the cows are going to have their estrus cycle. I believe it's within 3 to 4 days of that full moon that's going to happen, there in that mid to third week of September time frame. I've also found that, like I was just alluding to, that when there's a full moon, they carry on and they do their rutting at night because they can see. I mean, it just makes sense. They can see better, so they're a lot more active. They bugle, they rut, they fight, all of that at night, and then they're tired and worn out when it starts breaking light. Yeah. So most of the time what they do is they just shut down right during gray light or first light. They shut down and they go bed down, and then they're really slow to get up in the afternoon and evening and start bugling because, again, they know they've got great senses that they're going to have that full moon again the next night, and so they're a lot more nocturnal. Mm-hmm. So you've really got to take advantage of that, very first light, that very last 15 to 30 minutes of light, and get it done if you can during those time frames. But also know that if you've got an archery tag that as the hunt wears on, that moon is going to wane and you're going to get more and more daylight bugling activity, especially as more cows come into estrus, as you approach that third week of September.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I think mine, I want to say starts on the 13th and goes until the 26th.
That's right.
And I can afford to be there that first whole week, but I think week 2 I'm just going to have to kind of do half-day hunts. Just unfortunately I can't take that much time off work, but
right.
So yeah, we'll just have to play that one by ear and kind of see how that goes with the moon phase. So
I would say too, Stephen, springboarding off of that, if someone had to choose one week versus another, because I know people can't always spend the full 2 weeks, I would always select the second week of the archery hunt if possible. Okay. Because of the better bugling and rutting activity. And then for me, just over the years, for the most part, I'm going to say I've had more success on the morning hunts than the evening hunts overall.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Good to know. Well, I've asked you personally, but for the people on the podcast and everything, I see bulls coming in consistently now, but what is that behavior going to look like during the rut? Are those bulls still going to be there, or are they going to spread out and move around?
Oh, like on your trail camera?
Yeah. Yep.
You're saying?
Yep.
Yes. Again, these bulls, it's just a built-in mechanism. It's just how God created them. It's just amazing how much they move from where they summer to where they rut. So I kind of use the trail cameras during the summer more as a barometer for the antler growth, just so I know the crop of bulls and kind of what is a reasonable expectation come the fall. But then, we have documented in Arizona bulls that have moved over 20 miles from where you're getting them on trail camera to where they get, taken during the fall. Yeah. One particular bull that I had in Unit 9, he moved to 7 West. Wow. It was 22 miles, a very distinct bull with a very distinct rack that you could not mistake. So it was the same bull, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So again, I would say to people, don't get too hung up on hunting one particular bull versus just saying, okay, this is what the growth looks like. This is, what's going to be a reasonable expectation this year for this unit and what I'm seeing on my trail camera. I know there's people who are strict trophy hunters and want to go after one bull, and that's very satisfying to them, and more power to them. But yeah, with that just built into them, that pattern of them moving to rut, I would say, in your scouting, be looking for, when you're out there in the summertime, looking for rubs and things like that indicate that there's rutting going on in that area, and that's where you're going to find bulls in the fall.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, hey, I'd like to open up to you for just closing thoughts, things that you'd like to do. Talk about, you have a special program for here in Arizona, right? That was kind of like a year-round payment or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah. Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. Yeah, it's called Zero Hunt Fees. And what it is a program where I basically offer it to non-residents because that's typically who I'm guiding. They are able to pay $349 a year. They get application help. They get unit choice selection help. And then the big thing is, if and when they draw a tag, that $349 per year membership completely covers the cost of their hunt. So they do not have to come up with any more money for their hunt. I've had several members draw. In fact, 7 of them drew this year and are going to be coming on fully outfitted hunts with us. 3 of those 7 were very first time applying in Arizona. They had never applied before. They didn't have any bonus points. And very first year in the program, and they drew.
Wow.
So they're saving thousands of dollars on a hunt. And what the great thing that I think about it, Stephen, is that $349 in a year is pretty easy for most people to sacrifice. Most people have a budget that will allow for that. Yeah. I say that most of us, without even thinking about it, spend that much, at a convenience store, buying waters or Gatorades or an energy drink or whatnot. People who have a Starbucks habit, they spend that much in a month easily. Yeah. So think about it that way. Would you rather pay $349 and hedge against the fact that if you draw, a guided hunt these days is $6,000 or $7,000. I just like this and the concept of it because it opens up and makes it affordable to really just about anybody.
Sure, absolutely.
Yes. And then outside of that, of course, people who are blessed with money, we're happy to guide them. I've guided, before zero hunt fees, those were my clients.
Yep.
But now I like being able to guide, people from all facets of life and all walks of life. Really excited about the show airing on Sportsman Channel. So again, I want to mention that it starts July 1st. So for your listeners, if they have Dish Network, it would be on channel 395. And if they have DirecTV, it's channel 605. It airs 3 times a week, but the 2 main air times that people could catch it would be Saturday mornings at 9:30 Eastern Time. So here in the West, it would be 7:30 Mountain Time and 6:30 Arizona Time in the morning. And then on Mondays, it airs at noon Eastern Time.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, and I'll put all that stuff in the show notes, too, so everybody needs to refer to that. They can check it out.
And then, of course, people can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, it's at Elk Camp TV is the Instagram handle, and on Facebook, it's at Chappell Guide Service. And our website is chappellguideservice.com.
Awesome. And then where can they find your calls?
They're on the website. If it's easier for them, they can just log on to elkcamptv.com.
Okay.
elkcamptv.com will get you to my website, and from there you can easily find a link that will get you to the elk calls, or they can go on to buglingbull.com, and that will take them to Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls, and they can find my calls and others from Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls on that website.
Perfect. And then on YouTube, is it just Elk Camp TV as well?
Gosh, I'm stupid right now.
That's okay. I'm sure you can type in Steve Chappell or Elk Camp TV.
Right.
You'll
Yeah,
find
I got to
it.
be honest, Stephen. I don't know exactly. I think it's Steve Chappell Elk Camp. If I had to say, I think it's, yeah.
I'll also grab that link as well, and that'll be in the show notes for anyone. We'll have that all ordered out there for you guys.
Yeah, and I will say to the listeners that because of my show airing on TV and the agreement that I have with the network, they have exclusivity of the footage and the episodes for a period of time.
Yeah.
And so I'm not able to just dump my episodes out there onto YouTube because of that.
Yep.
And so that's kind of, the good and bad of airing a show on TV, but I understand that from the network's perspective, that if you're going to be airing your show on there, that they don't want people to just be able to see it for free on YouTube.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, that's typical for the industry and stuff. That's nothing out of the ordinary. So that's understandable.
But there is quite a bit of content on YouTube, especially calling instruction. There is definitely some hunts on there that people can watch. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, hey, any closing thoughts that you'd like to end us with?
Oh, I would just like to say I just really feel excited and so fortunate to be in this industry, and to get to visit with you today. I feel really humbled and honored, Stephen, that you would have me on here. This is all due to God's blessing in my life, and I just feel like, as Americans, we're just really fortunate and blessed to have people who defend our freedoms, the people in the military. I have family members who have been and are actively in the military, so I thank God for those people, that we're in a country where we've got the freedom to hunt and to just enjoy what we do, and I never want to take that for granted. It's just an amazing, amazing place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's fitting too, because today's Flag Day. So just as a general, I just want to give a thank you to every single veteran, that is anybody that has served. Just appreciate everything that you guys do for us, and know that it's not taken for granted. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Amen to that, Stephen.
Awesome. Well, hey, I am honored that you gave me time out of your day. It looks like we're going on 1:43 here. So, I'm sorry, 1:43. And so I'm honored that you gave me your time. I know you've got things to tend to, so I appreciate you gracing us with your presence on this podcast, and just dropping all the knowledge that you have. It means a lot to me and my listeners. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, I appreciate all your listeners for listening in. And I hope that maybe one thing that I said will make a difference in their next elk hunt. That would be a great thing if that happened.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you again. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk to you soon and maybe do a follow-up episode.
God bless. Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I really appreciate it.
God bless you too. Bye-bye.
Take care, my friend. Bye.
Thank you again, Mr. Chappell, for your time. I really appreciate you coming on the BowhuntingAZ podcast. And thank you all so much to you, the audience, for listening to this episode. I hope each and every one of you walk away with something new. Like I said in the intro, make sure you're following Steve Chappell on Instagram at Elk Camp TV and across all social media. Be sure to watch his second series of Elk Camp TV coming out this July. And lastly, go visit his website and get some of his quality elk calls. I can say from personal experience, they sound so dang good. If you're not yet, make sure you're subscribed and please smash those 5 stars on iTunes for me and leave a little review below. I'd really appreciate it. It'll help me out. Make sure you're following BowhuntingAZ on Instagram and Facebook. You're going to see more giveaways coming down the line soon. Have a great day, everyone. I'll catch you in the next episode where I talk with Jason Miller, trail cam guru, on all things trail cams. See ya.